Welcome to Ian Cinema, your destination for endless entertainment and unforgettable movie moments. Discover exciting films, inspiring stories, and cinematic journeys across every genre. Whether you love action, drama, thrillers, or timeless favorites, there's always something waiting for you here. Sit back, enjoy the experience, and let Ian Cinema bring the magic of movies to your screen. The Gray Man is a 2022 American action thriller directed by Anthony and Joe Russo. The screenplay was written by Joe Russo, Christopher Marcus, and Stephen McFeely, based on Mark Greene's 2009 novel of the same name. The film features an impressive ensemble cast, including Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, Anna de Armas, Jessica Hennick, Regé-Jean Page, Wagner Moura, Julia Butters, Dhanush in his Hollywood debut, Alfred Woodard, and Billy Bob Thornton. Produced by the Russo brothers company, Agbo, The Gray Man serves as the first installment in a planned franchise inspired by Greene's best-selling novel series. The story follows CIA operative Sierra 6, Ryan Gosling, who becomes the target of a relentless manhunt after uncovering dark secrets involving his superiors. Pursuing him is Lloyd Hansen, Chris Evans, a ruthless former CIA agent turned mercenary whose violent and unpredictable methods make him a deadly adversary. A film adaptation of Mark Greene's novel was first announced in 2011, with James Gray attached to direct. The project initially aimed to star Brad Pitt and was later reimagined with Charlize Theron in the gender-swapped lead role. However, neither version moved forward, leaving the adaptation stuck in development for several years. In July 2020, the project was officially revived when Anthony and Joe Russo signed on to direct, with Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans confirmed in the lead roles. Filming took place between March and July 2021 across Los Angeles, Paris, and Prague. With a reported production budget of $200 million, The Gray Man became one of the most expensive films ever produced by Netflix. The film received a limited theatrical release on July 15, 2022. Before debuting worldwide on Netflix on July 22, 2022. It earned mixed reviews from critics, who praised its star-studded cast and high-energy action sequences but criticized its formulaic screenplay and fast-paced storytelling. Following its release, Netflix announced plans to expand the franchise with a sequel, featuring Ryan Gosling and Dhanush reprising their roles, along with a spin-off film set in the same universe. The story begins in 2003, when senior CIA official Donald Fitzroy visits a prisoner named Cortland Gentry, setting the stage for the events that transform him into the legendary operative known as Sierra 6. 8 years earlier in Florida, Gentry was a teenager convicted of killing his abusive father to protect his younger brother. While serving his sentence, he was approached by Donald Fitzroy, who offered him a chance at freedom. In exchange, Court agreed to join the CIA's secretive Sierra program, an elite black ops unit where agents operate in complete secrecy, existing in the gray between official missions and deniable operations. By 2021, Court, now known as Sierra 6, is partnered with CIA agent Johnny Miranda on a mission in Bangkok during the Songkran Festival. Their objective is to eliminate a target known as Dining Car, who is suspected of selling classified national security information. When 6 realizes he cannot complete the mission without putting innocent civilians at risk, he confronts the target directly. As Dining Car dies, he reveals that he was once Sierra 4 and secretly hands 6 an encrypted drive containing evidence of corruption involving senior CIA official Denny Carmichael, who is leading the operation. When 6 questions Carmichael about the mission and the drive, Carmichael refuses to explain the truth. Distrusting him, 6 declines extraction by Carmichael's team, sends the encrypted drive to former Sierra handler Margaret Cahill in Prague, and contacts the retired Fitzroy for help. Determined to recover the drive, Carmichael hires Lloyd Hansen, a former CIA operative who was dismissed because of his violent and sociopathic behavior. Hansen kidnaps Fitzroy's young niece, Claire, forcing Fitzroy to approve Six's assassination by the extraction team. Six survives the attack, eliminates the team, and escapes. Concerned about Hansen's reckless methods, Carmichael assigns CIA official Suzanne Brewer to supervise him. Meanwhile, Hansen keeps Claire hostage at his heavily guarded mansion in Croatia and places a massive bounty on Six, attracting mercenaries and assassins from around the world. Six travels to Vienna to obtain the serial number of Claire's pacemaker from a contact named Laszlo Sosa. However, Sosa betrays him in hopes of claiming the bounty. Six narrowly escapes the trap just as Hansen arrives. Hansen kills Sosa, while Six defeats Hansen's entire strike team before being rescued by Donnie Miranda. After the failed Bangkok mission damages Miranda's career, she initially plans to arrest Six to restore her reputation. However, Six convinces her to help him reach Margaret Cahill's apartment in Prague. Cahill successfully decrypts the drive, exposing Carmichael's deep corruption and his connection to a mysterious benefactor tied to a powerful shadow organization. Hansen sends multiple assassin teams after Cahill. Knowing she is terminally ill and determined to protect the evidence, Cahill sacrifices herself by blowing up her apartment, allowing Six and Miranda to escape. During the chaos, Six is captured and handcuffed in a crowded city square. A massive gun battle erupts across Prague, leaving numerous police officers dead. Six escapes aboard a tram after an intense chase and is once again rescued by Miranda in Cahill's bulletproof vehicle. The pair trace Claire's location by tracking the wireless signal from her pacemaker at a nearby hospital. However, a Tamil mercenary known as the Lone Wolf, who has been hired by Hansen, ambushes them, defeats both agents, and steals the encrypted drive before delivering it to Hansen in exchange for the bounty. Six and Miranda follow the mercenary to Hansen's Croatian estate. While Miranda creates a diversion, Six infiltrates the mansion and rescues both Fitzroy and Claire. During their escape, the critically wounded Fitzroy sacrifices himself in an attempt to kill Hansen, allowing Six and Claire a chance to survive. Meanwhile, the Lone Wolf becomes disgusted by Hansen's cruelty and lack of morals. Instead of honoring the deal, he hands the encrypted drive to Miranda before walking away. Hansen kidnaps Claire once again and drags her into a hedge maze, where he faces Six in a final showdown. After releasing Claire, Hansen engages Six in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. Just as Six is about to kill him, Suzanne Brewer unexpectedly shoots Hansen dead. Brewer then reveals her plan to blame all of Carmichael's illegal actions on Hansen, giving her leverage over Carmichael while protecting the CIA from public scandal. She promises that Claire will remain safe as long as Six continues working for the agency. Left with little choice, Six and Miranda cooperate in the cover-up, and Carmichael escapes without facing any consequences. Following a debriefing at CIA headquarters, Miranda privately warns Carmichael that she will kill him if Claire is ever harmed. Soon afterward, Six escapes from CIA custody. After another violent confrontation leaving the fates of Carmichael and Brewer uncertain, he rescues Claire, and the two disappear together, driving toward an unknown destination. Development of the film remained quiet until July 2020, when Anthony and Joe Russo were officially announced as directors for Netflix's adaptation of The Gray Man. The screenplay was written by Joe Russo, Christopher Marcus, and Stephen McFeely, with additional contributions from Manny Gregory, Charles Levitt, Rhett Reese, Josh Rapnell, Paul Wernick, and others. Netflix envisioned the project as the beginning of a major action franchise. Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans were cast in the lead roles. In December 2020, Ana de Armas, Jessica Hennick, Wagner Moura, Julia Butters, and Dhanush joined the cast. In March 2021, Regé-Jean Page, Billy Bob Thornton, Alfred Woodard, E. McWilliker, and Scott Hayes were also added to the ensemble. production on The Grey Man saw several updates before and during filming. An April report on the Prague shoot revealed that Michael Gandolfini had joined the cast, and in May 2021, Dhanush officially became part of the ensemble. Filming was originally scheduled to begin on January 18, 2021, in Long Beach, California, but was delayed until March 1. Regé-Jean Page completed his scenes within the first month of production. The filmmakers later moved to Europe, shooting across several stunning locations, including Prague in the Czech Republic, the Château de Chantilly in France, and parts of Croatia. Filming in Prague began on June 27, 2021, and the entire production wrapped on July 31, 2021. The film score was composed by Henry Jackman, who had previously collaborated with directors Anthony and Joe Russo on several projects. Jackman started working on the music in December 2021, beginning with a 17-minute orchestral suite that laid the foundation for the soundtrack. The Grey Man received a limited theatrical release on July 15, 2022, before premiering on Netflix on July 22, 2022. Although Netflix does not disclose theatrical box office earnings, industry analysts estimated that the film earned approximately $200,000 from around 400 theaters during its opening weekend, and The Wire later estimated its first full-week theatrical earnings at between $300,000 and $375,000. The movie quickly became a streaming success. Netflix reported that it was watched for 88.55 million hours during its first 3 days, which translates to roughly 43.5 million viewers. It ranked as the most watched film in 84 countries, and by September 2022, total viewing time had reached an impressive 253.8 million hours. Critical reception, however, was mixed. On Rotten Tomatoes, 45% of 276 critics gave the film a positive review, resulting in an average rating of 5.5 out of 10. The site's consensus described the movie as having the star-studded outline of an entertaining action thriller but criticized it for relying on familiar ideas from stronger films. Metacritic assigned the film a score of 49 out of 100 based on 55 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. The story centers on Cortland Gentry, a convicted criminal whose prison sentence is secretly commuted by CIA operative Donald Fitzroy. Instead of granting him a normal life, Fitzroy erases Gentry's identity, renames him Sierra 6, trains him in Tel Aviv, and turns him into a highly skilled government assassin. From that moment on, 6 exists solely to carry out dangerous missions, fully aware that he could one day be eliminated by the very agency he serves. That fate has already claimed several other Sierra agents. At the beginning of the film, 6 is assigned to eliminate Sierra 4, a former operative who went rogue after uncovering widespread corruption within the CIA. Before dying, 4 secretly passes 6 an encrypted flash drive containing evidence of the conspiracy. Curious about the truth and determined to uncover how deep the corruption runs, 6 becomes the target of the very organization he once trusted. CIA official Denny Carmichael, who ordered 4's assassination, betrays 6 and hires Lloyd Hansen to eliminate him. Lloyd is a ruthless former CIA operative who was dismissed after only 5.5 months because of his unethical behavior, lack of self-control, and use of unauthorized torture. Now working as a private contractor, he operates without any legal or moral restraints, making him an exceptionally dangerous adversary. To force 6 out of hiding, Lloyd kidnaps Donald Fitzroy and his young niece, Claire, knowing they are the closest thing 6 has to a family. After Claire's parents died unexpectedly, Fitzroy became her guardian and raised her as his own daughter. During previous missions, 6 helped protect Claire, forming a deep bond with both of them. Initially, Fitzroy refuses to reveal 6's location despite Lloyd's threats. However, once he realizes Claire has already been kidnapped, he sacrifices himself by ordering 6's escorts to kill him, hoping it will save her life. 6 manages to escape, learns the truth, and forgives Fitzroy for his difficult decision. Instead of seeking revenge, he focuses on rescuing both Fitzroy and Claire. Later, when he finally has the opportunity to kill Lloyd, 6 chooses Claire's safety over personal vengeance, ensuring her rescue before continuing the fight. The film also highlights an unspoken code among professional assassins. Children are never meant to be targets. Lloyd and Carmichael repeatedly violate this principle, causing many operatives, both inside and outside the government, to turn against them and support 6. Packed with relentless action, The Gray Man features intense hand-to-hand combat, gunfights, knife fights, explosions involving bazookas and grenades, and even improvised weapons like fire extinguishers. The violence is frequent and often graphic, with heavy bloodshed and numerous deaths throughout the story. Many innocent civilians and law enforcement officers are caught in the crossfire because Lloyd and Carmichael show little concern for collateral damage. One of the film's most destructive sequences occurs aboard an aircraft, where several people are thrown from the plane before an engine is struck, triggering a massive explosion that causes the aircraft to crash and results in multiple fatalities. The Gray Man is packed with intense, relentless action and graphic violence from beginning to end. In one early sequence, a man attempts to escape by parachute, only for 6 to intercept him midair, wrap the parachute cords around his neck, and kill him. His body is later seen hanging from the deployed parachute. Throughout the film, numerous characters die in high-impact crashes, collapsing buildings, explosions, gunfights, and brutal hand-to-hand combat. Several characters are strangled, while others willingly sacrifice themselves to save friends. One person detonates her own oxygen tank, and another conceals a live grenade on his body before sacrificing himself. At one point, Lloyd is said to have a higher kill count than the entire Israeli Mossad. His introduction immediately establishes his cruelty as he tortures a man with battery jumper cables to extract information. Later, he rips another man's fingernails out using pliers. Lloyd constantly threatens those around him, including his own team, and in one particularly disturbing scene, fires a flare gun near young Claire's face, burning her while making it clear he has no problem killing a child. After losing 2 fingers in an explosion, he crudely uses a shoelace as a tourniquet. The film also references other disturbing acts of violence. The character is said to have been drowned for angering the wrong government official, while another scene shows a man's head being forced underwater. Someone is reported to have had their eyes gouged out over a bag of snack food. Fireworks and flare guns are used as weapons. People are pepper sprayed, tranquilizer darts are fired, and objects are smashed during heated confrontations. One enraged character even shoots and kicks dead bodies while insulting them. Beyond the action, the story explores corruption within powerful government agencies. 6 discovers that officials have covered up unauthorized assassinations, torture, bombings, and the massive civilian casualties caused by their operations. Flashbacks reveal 6's traumatic childhood, showing his abusive father burning him with a lit cigarette lighter and forcing his head underwater as punishment. 6 later explains that he went to prison for killing his father after intervening to save his younger brother from a brutal beating that would likely have ended in death. The film also touches on the consequences of addiction. A woman who spent her entire life smoking is shown relying on oxygen tanks in the present day, with a friend remarking that she should have quit when she first intended to. Although 6's work for the CIA can be viewed as a form of redemption, it is morally complicated. Without Fitzroy recruiting him into the Sierra program, he would have served a total of 36 years in prison. Instead, he spends his life carrying out professional assassinations on behalf of the government, making his redemption far from straightforward. Claire is kidnapped because of her connection to the CIA through her uncle, and it is revealed that this is not the first time she has been targeted. The repeated kidnappings have clearly left her emotionally scarred. Throughout the story, characters lie, blackmail, steal, commit treason, and forge documents, with 6 even obtaining a fake passport through criminal contacts. A young girl with a serious heart condition is repeatedly rushed to the hospital, and a child is used as leverage during dangerous negotiations. The workplace dynamics are equally harsh. Carmichael and Lloyd frequently belittle female CIA agents Tawny Miranda and Suzanne Brewer. Carmichael repeatedly threatens their careers, blaming them for Six's escape while refusing to acknowledge his own responsibility. One of the film's central themes is the moral ambiguity of covert intelligence operations. It repeatedly suggests that difficult choices must sometimes be made to prevent even greater tragedies. Kidnapping and assassination are portrayed as questionable but occasionally necessary tools in the world of espionage. During his mission to rescue Fitzroy and Claire, Six kills dozens of mercenaries, with one character estimating at least 30 enemy casualties, though the true number is likely much higher. As the story progresses, the distinction between right and wrong becomes increasingly blurred. True to the action thriller genre, The Gray Man rarely pauses for long before launching into another violent confrontation. Nearly every scene features some form of physical conflict, and while the gore is not excessive, several moments are graphic enough to be unsettling. Strong language is also present throughout the film, including one use of the F-word and several instances of God's name being used irreverently. These elements make The Gray Man a darker, more mature action film. While it is not the most graphic movie Netflix has released, it is certainly far from family-friendly. I had been looking forward to The Gray Man, largely because of its impressive cast, including Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, Ana de Armas, and Billy Bob Thornton. Since I'm unfamiliar with the novel it is based on, I'm judging it purely as a standalone film. The cast delivers committed performances. Ryan Gosling is perfectly restrained as a stoic and highly capable Six, while Chris Evans clearly enjoys playing the wildly unhinged Lloyd, stealing many scenes with his over-the-top villainy. The rapid-fire dialogue is often witty and entertaining, although it eventually becomes repetitive. The extended shootout through the streets of Prague stands out as the film's strongest action sequence. Unfortunately, beyond a handful of exciting moments, I found the film deeply disappointing. Despite its reported $200 million budget, the visual effects rarely impressed me. The action relies too heavily on smoke, flying debris, frantic editing, and constantly moving drone shots. While these techniques initially look stylish, they quickly become distracting and make many scenes feel artificial rather than exciting. The airplane sequence, in particular, nearly lost me completely. The effects looked so unconvincing that I struggled to believe anything happening on screen, making it difficult to stay emotionally invested in the story. The characters also felt surprisingly one-dimensional, with many resembling exaggerated cartoon figures instead of believable people. Even Ana de Armas, who was outstanding in No Time to Die, is given very little material to work with here. After more than 2 hours, the film ends by clearly setting up a sequel rather than delivering a satisfying conclusion. Personally, I had little interest in continuing the story after this installment. Watching The Gray Man reminded me of Commando, another action film centered on a lone hero protecting a young girl from overwhelming odds. Despite being made decades earlier on a much smaller budget, Commando tells a tighter story, delivers more memorable action, and wraps everything up in just 90 minutes. By comparison, The Gray Man often feels unnecessarily stretched, with several flashback sequences disrupting the pacing instead of enhancing the emotional stakes. Overall, The Gray Man is a frustrating mix of impressive talent and missed opportunities. Strong performances from Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans, along with a few standout action scenes, aren't enough to overcome its bloated runtime, uneven pacing, and excessive reliance on flashy editing techniques. It's a film worth watching once if you're a fan of large-scale action movies, but I have little desire to revisit it. Finally, I don't believe it's fair to judge a movie based on the behavior of its fan base. Public opinion can often become louder than the film itself, especially when critics and general audiences strongly disagree. Whenever that happens, I prefer to set the surrounding conversation aside and evaluate the movie on its own merits rather than letting online debates influence my opinion. The same debate comes up time and time again, and it's happening once more with the Russo brothers' The Gray Man. At the time of writing, the film holds a 48% critics score and a 90% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. That kind of split immediately fuels the argument that critics don't matter and that everyday viewers are the only people who truly know what makes a good movie. Before diving into my thoughts, it's worth mentioning that I used to be a huge fan of the Russo brothers. I loved their work on Community and was thrilled when they were chosen to direct Captain America: The Winter Soldier, followed by 3 major Marvel ensemble films. Those movies were massive successes, making the Russos the highest-grossing directors in film history. Over time, however, my opinion of their work has changed. As I've watched more films and developed a broader appreciation for cinema, I've become increasingly aware of what I see as their creative limitations. For me, the Russo brothers don't have a distinct artistic voice. That became especially clear after Cherry, their first major project following the MCU. Despite its impressive cast, ambitious social commentary, and expensive-looking cinematography, the film ultimately felt empty. It had plenty to say on the surface but left very little emotional or thematic impact. The Gray Man falls into much the same category. It represents the Russos' biggest attempt to establish themselves outside of Marvel. With a production budget exceeding $200 million, it became Netflix's most expensive film, surpassing titles like Red Notice, Six Underground, and The Irishman. Judging by its audience reception, it's clearly entertaining many viewers, and I completely understand why. The film is polished from top to bottom. The production values are impressive, the action is expertly staged, and the cast delivers strong performances. Ryan Gosling brings effortless charisma as Sierra Six, while Chris Evans fully embraces his role as the ruthless and unpredictable Lloyd Hansen. The dialogue is witty, the visuals are stylish, and nearly every frame reflects the movie's enormous budget. There's plenty here to enjoy. The story follows the Gray Men, a covert CIA program made up of highly skilled assassins recruited from convicted criminals who agree to serve as Sierra agents. When Sierra 6 discovers that he's being ordered to eliminate fellow operative Sierra 4, he uncovers dangerous secrets within the agency. Suddenly, he becomes the target of the very organization he works for, which hires the brutal mercenary Lloyd Hansen to eliminate him at any cost. The biggest issue, however, is that the film's sleek presentation hides a fairly ordinary story. At times, it feels like a blend of Mission Impossible, John Wick, and The Bourne Identity, a gritty spy thriller packed with gunfights, colorful lighting, and close-quarters combat. But while it borrows elements from those franchises, it never reaches the same level of precision or excitement. Unlike those films, The Gray Man lacks a distinctive style in the way it's put together. Despite its glossy appearance, there's very little flair in its pacing or storytelling. Everything is presented competently, but rarely with much personality or creative energy. I had a similar reaction to Avengers: Infinity War and Avengers: Endgame, which I previously rated 7.3 because I found them thematically inconsistent and overly complicated. Those films still felt more emotionally engaging and cohesive than The Gray Man, which often comes across as surprisingly unfocused. None of the ideas themselves are bad. The story draws from familiar espionage novels and classic spy movie tropes, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. The problem is that the film never gives those ideas enough urgency or emotional weight. It stretches across a lengthy runtime while rarely building genuine momentum. Although it's entertaining in the moment, it gradually loses energy and occasionally becomes repetitive. The central theme is questioning loyalty, exposing corruption, and choosing what's right over blind obedience and never receive the depth they deserve. The movie introduces these concepts but never fully explores why they matter or why the audience should become emotionally invested in them. There's nothing especially offensive or poorly made about The Gray Man, which probably explains its strong audience approval. Nearly every technical aspect works well enough on the surface. Ironically, that's also what makes it frustrating. It functions perfectly fine without leaving much of a lasting impression. It doesn't have the relentless momentum of Mad Max, Fury Road or The Raid. It lacks the visual elegance of Casino Royale and Skyfall. It never achieves the razor-sharp clarity of John Wick or the sustained suspense of the recent Mission Impossible films. Instead, it feels emotionally distant, like the cinematic equivalent of a plain Ritz cracker. It's perfectly acceptable, but it lacks flavor and a real sense of purpose. It's easy to see that the Russo brothers hope Sierra 6 can become their own version of James Bond, a dependable spy franchise they can revisit after leaving the Marvel Universe behind. Between The Gray Man and Cherry, it's clear they're eager to prove they can succeed outside the MCU. In many ways, they've accomplished that. They've shown they can produce polished, expensive, crowd-pleasing entertainment that appeals to a wide audience. Still, as I watch their career evolve, I can't help wishing their films carried a stronger creative identity. They're undeniably skilled at adapting existing books, characters, and franchises on a massive scale, but I struggle to see a unique artistic vision that defines their work. More often than not, their films feel like polished echoes of better movies, accompanied by slick visuals and smooth jazz-inspired soundtracks rather than a voice that's unmistakably their own. Before diving into the review, here's a quick summary of the story. CIA operative Sierra 6, played by Ryan Gosling, is a highly skilled agent who spends his days eliminating dangerous targets while carrying out covert missions. Everything changes when one of his assignments reveals a shocking truth. The organization 6 works for may not be what it claims to be. Suddenly, he's thrust into a relentless race to uncover the truth. Caught in the middle of the conflict is 6's original recruiter, Fitzroy, portrayed by Bob Thornton. At the same time, the ruthless Lloyd Hansen, played by Chris Evans, is determined to hunt 6 down before he can expose anything. That's essentially the plot, but it's also about as clear as the movie ever gets. Despite being packed with twists and surprises, the story quickly becomes difficult to follow. The biggest problem with The Gray Man is that it never slows down long enough to let its characters, story, or audience catch up. The film opens with 6 serving time in prison for murder when Fitzroy approaches him with an offer: earn your freedom by joining a secret CIA program. At this stage, viewers know almost nothing about either character, and the movie makes little effort to establish who they are in an engaging way. Instead, Fitzroy delivers a lengthy exposition dump that explains the basic facts of 6's situation. While it provides the necessary information, it does almost nothing to make 6 feel like a compelling or relatable character. Moments later, the story jumps to Bangkok for 6's latest mission. As mentioned earlier, 6 discovers through his target that the people he's working for can't be trusted, setting the main story in motion. The problem is that this revelation comes far too quickly to have any real emotional impact. In one scene, we're introduced to 6's role within the organization, and in the very next, he's already turning against it. For 6, this betrayal may be significant, but for the audience, it's just another piece of information thrown at them before they've had a chance to become invested. There's no real suspense because the film rushes through everything. It would have been far more effective if we had first seen 6 build trust and loyalty with his employers before watching that relationship fall apart. Without that foundation, the betrayal feels hollow instead of shocking. The movie doesn't help itself by relying on predictable storytelling choices. The villain has the obligatory facial scar. 6 predictably refuses to kill him because a child gets caught in the middle. These moments feel less like organic storytelling and more like a checklist of familiar action movie cliché / copyright s. The pacing isn't the only thing moving too fast, yet the editing is even more frantic. The Gray Man is packed with rapid-fire cuts that make many of its action scenes confusing rather than exciting. Instead of building tension, the constant editing creates visual chaos, making it difficult to follow what's happening on screen. Take the aerial action sequence, For example, whether or not you enjoyed Uncharted, its airplane set piece was at least easy to understand. In The Gray Man, a similar sequence is edited so aggressively that it's almost impossible to stay oriented. The non-stop cuts, heavy CGI, and frantic pacing turn what should have been a thrilling moment into an exhausting one. The editing also weakens the quieter scenes. There's a conversation between Six's superior and his assistant inside a bathroom that's filmed almost entirely with standard shot reverse shot coverage. Every line of dialogue is followed by another quick cut, bouncing back and forth so rapidly that the conversation feels mechanical. Instead of allowing the performances to breathe, the editing dictates the rhythm, making the scene feel unnecessarily rushed. Sometimes, simply holding a wider shot for a few extra seconds would have made a world of difference. Let the audience take in the environment, observe the characters together, and allow the dialogue to unfold naturally rather than cutting on every single line. The film's transitions between scenes are equally disjointed. At one point, Six is walking through the streets of Bangkok while making a phone call. The movie suddenly flashes a giant location title and jumps to Baku, where Fitzroy answers the call. Almost immediately, however, it cuts back to Bangkok while the conversation continues. This raises an obvious question. Why interrupt the flow just to show that Fitzroy is in Baku? He's indoors. The location has no immediate relevance to the scene, and nothing about the conversation depends on where he is. These constant location changes feel more distracting than meaningful, making the film seem fragmented rather than smoothly connected. Otherwise, it never feels like the stakes truly matter. The film also relies on a series of predictable, well-worn story beats. Naturally, the villain has a scar across his face. Naturally, Six refuses to kill him because a child suddenly gets in the way. It all feels as though the writers are simply checking off action movie cliché / copyright s one by one. The story races forward at such a relentless pace that it barely gives viewers a chance to breathe. Unfortunately, the editing is even more frantic. The Gray Man is packed with so many rapid cuts that the action often becomes confusing instead of exciting. Rather than creating tension, the constant editing makes many of the fight scenes exhausting and difficult to follow. Say what you will about Uncharted, but at least its airplane sequence was easy to understand. The Gray Man features a similar scene, yet it's edited so aggressively that it's difficult to keep track of what's happening. The sequence is overloaded with quick cuts, heavy CGI, and non-stop movement, leaving it visually chaotic rather than thrilling. The editing also weakens many of the dialogue scenes. In one moment, Six's superior speaks with his assistant in a bathroom. Instead of letting the conversation unfold naturally, the scene relies on basic shot reverse shot editing, cutting back and forth with almost every line of dialogue. The pace is so relentless that it feels distracting rather than engaging. Sometimes the film simply needs to hold a wider shot, allowing the actors and the environment to breathe. More creative framing could have made these quieter moments far more interesting. Beyond individual scenes, the transitions between locations lack cohesion. For example, Six is walking through the streets of Bangkok while making a phone call. The film abruptly cuts to Baku, where Bob Thornton's character answers the call, complete with a giant location title splashed across the screen. Moments later, it cuts right back to Bangkok as the conversation continues. Since the character in Baku isn't doing anything visually important, the location change adds very little. It feels like the movie is constantly reminding viewers how globe-trotting it is, even when those transitions don't serve the story. One of the film's biggest action sequences takes place in Prague, where complete chaos erupts outside a building. Explosions tear through the streets. Assassins exchange gunfire with local security forces, and eventually a tram derails, smashing through vehicles while destroying an entire city block. Watching the destruction unfold, it's hard not to wonder why an event of this scale isn't treated like a massive international crisis. Yet for the film's main hero, played with quiet restraint by Ryan Gosling, and his ally, portrayed by Armas, It's simply another excuse to brush themselves off and head toward the next action sequence. That perfectly sums up The Gray Man. Despite its enormous scale, everything feels strangely self-contained, as though the consequences never extend beyond the next explosion. Reportedly costing around $200 million, The Gray Man was Netflix's most expensive production at the time of its release. Based loosely on the first novel in Mark Greene's best-selling series, the movie certainly looks expensive. Every frame is polished, stylish, and packed with impressive production value. It's a sleek blockbuster filled with constant movement, making it easy background entertainment that always has something happening on screen. Unfortunately, beneath the glossy presentation lies a surprisingly conventional story. The screenplay by Joe Russo, Christopher Marcus, and Stephen McFeely, writers who delivered far stronger work throughout the Russo brothers' Marvel films, leans heavily on familiar spy thriller formulas. The plot rarely surprises, the character development is minimal, and before long it becomes clear that the film prioritizes style over substance, offering little emotional depth or meaningful insight into its characters. Ryan Gosling plays Court Gentry, better known by his CIA codename, Sierra 6. Years earlier, Gentry was serving a prison sentence for killing his abusive father when CIA handler Donald Fitzroy, played by Bob Thornton, recruited him into a secret assassination program in exchange for his freedom. Nearly 2 decades later, Six is one of the agency's most effective operatives. During what should be a routine mission, Six hesitates after noticing a child near his target. He soon discovers that the man he was sent to eliminate was once Sierra 4, another former operative who possessed damaging information about senior CIA official Denny Carmichael, played by Regé-Jean Page. When Six obtains evidence exposing Carmichael's corruption, he becomes the agency's next target. To eliminate him, Carmichael hires Lloyd Hansen, a ruthless mercenary played with gleeful enthusiasm by Chris Evans. As Six goes on the run with only fellow agent Donnie Miranda, portrayed by Armas, willing to help him, he must survive relentless attacks, expose the conspiracy, outsmart Hansen, and rescue the few people he truly cares about before it's too late. The film includes every familiar spy action ingredient: rogue agents, corrupt intelligence officials, double crosses, over-the-top assassins, explosive shootouts, brutal hand-to-hand combat, and non-stop chases. While these sequences provide plenty of spectacle, they're often designed to distract from the fact that the characters remain underdeveloped and the story ultimately leads to very little. Although the film eventually gives Six a basic personal motivation to explain some of his actions, the emotional payoff feels limited. Gosling is physically convincing in the role and remains effortlessly charismatic, but he portrays Six with such controlled restraint that the character can sometimes feel emotionally distant. He's engaging enough to keep audiences invested, yet much of the time he comes across as a blank slate. Even the script's frequent one-liners rarely leave much of an impression. Bob Thornton brings his usual charm and eccentric personality to Donald Fitzroy, making the most of his limited screen time. However, most of the supporting cast isn't nearly as fortunate. Armas and Jessica Hennick both play capable, highly skilled agents, but neither character is given much of a life beyond serving as loyal allies to Gosling's Six and Regé-Jean Page's Carmichael. Their performances are solid, but the screenplay never allows them to become fully developed characters in their own right. Page is the typically irredeemable evil CIA suit, slick and soulless and one-dimensional to a fault. Acclaimed Indian actor Dan shows up as a freelance mercenary hired by Hansen, who, despite his charisma and action chops, his role is mostly superfluous. Evans is the only real wild card. In what is clearly his biggest attempt yet to play an anti-Captain America, Evans cackles and smirks maniacally at every turn. You can practically see him forcing himself to not twirl his porn-star mustache, which should get its own star billing. He's pretty much acting in his own movie, fast with the jokes. Even as he's yanking someone's fingernails out during one torture scene, but Regé-Jean Hansen is ultimately cartoonish, undercutting any real dread he might generate. That's really the final analysis on the Greyman. There's little generation of dread, tension, suspense, emotion, humor, or even engagement. The movie's beats are so familiar, the characters so cookie-cutter, the action sequences and fights so by the numbers, if occasionally fun, that the movie undercuts itself. Even the around-the-world settings don't make much of an impact because the movie flies in and out of them so fast. Seriously, this is one of those movies where everyone can get anywhere in the world in 5 minutes. The Russos clearly know how to put a huge film together, and just as clearly I hope to start a new franchise with the Greyman, unless Marvel comes calling with Secret Wars, of course. But aside from its scope, a few striking action moments and the overall quality of the cast, this is like a battle world of spy thrillers with pieces of it cut and pasted from other properties. Other than Extraction, I can't think of another English-language action movie from Netflix that I actually enjoyed, let alone that I felt deserved a sequel. Writer, director Joe Russo, half of a directing duo with his brother Anthony, wrote that movie, which is why I was partially optimistic when I saw he was co-writing the focus of this review. The Greyman. Then I saw that Ryan Gosling was going to star alongside Chris Evans and Armas, and that its budget would be one of Netflix's largest at $200 million. Again, I felt optimistic, but then I remembered that this is Netflix we're talking about. And my feelings quickly became a lot more guarded. Now, finally, I've watched it and had time to think. After some contemplation, I've come to the conclusion that it's okay, but definitely not worth the $200 million dumped into it. The Greyman opens with our hero, named Sierra 6, Ryan Gosling, on mission in Thailand with a fellow CIA operative Danny Miranda, and at Armas. Their mission is to eliminate a man who's carrying the asset, which we soon find out is a memory card that contains some compromising intel about some CIA shockholders. After getting his hands on the asset, 6 chooses not to turn it in, forcing CIA Chief Daniel Carmichael, Regé-Jean Page, to let loose his psychotic henchman, Lloyd Hansen. Chris Evans, hoping to draw 6 out, Lloyd chooses to target his mentor, Donald Fitzroy, Billy Bob Thornton, and his niece Julia Butters, with whom 6 has grown close. With Donnie's help, A6 fights off hordes of Lloyd's contractors in an attempt to rescue the 2 people closest to him, leading to a violent final confrontation. Without a doubt, the Greyman starts off strong with a colorful and riveting sequence in a Thai club that ends with a brutal hand-to-hand fight amongst detonating fireworks tubes. In the action scene and all others, Gosling acquits himself well, demonstrating the character's singular ability to swiftly dispatch his opponents. This sequence also effectively establishes 6's moral code as he clearly expresses his desire to limit civilian casualties and collateral damage. In addition, Armas gets to demonstrate her fighting abilities once again, having previously impressed in No Time to Die. Here a character Danny is immediately shown to be a total badass and a worthy female counterpart to 6. All in all, the first 20 minutes or so of this movie are excellent. Sadly, the longer the Greyman goes on, the easier it becomes to identify its flaws and deficiencies. Take the villains for example. Within a few scenes, it's obvious that Daniel Carmichael is nothing but a one-note antagonistic administrator, wasting a Regé-Jean Page on a role that's devoid of nuance and physicality. It's pretty much the same for Denny's number 2. Suzanne Brewer, Jessica Henwick, but at least she gets to be in the field and annoyingly yell at a well-known psycho for being a psycho. I'm of course talking about Lloyd, also undeniably an amusing bad guy, but his only prominent trait is that he likes hurting people and joking around while doing so. Chris Evans is a fine actor, and I liked him in this one, but he was almost overcast here. His character has no depth. He's evil for the sake of being evil. Considering that superhero villains are similarly thinly written, You'd think the guy who just shit a Captain America would want to apply someone more substantial. Thankfully, the good guys are a bit better drawn, but only a bit. Thornton's sound as retired CIA officer Donald Fitzroy, exhibiting the necessary traits to make him believable as someone seeks views as a father. It's similar for Armas, who imbues Dani with the characteristics that make her plausibly someone 6 foot trust as an ally. They're solid characters reinforced with competent performances, but they're also fairly one-dimensional. Then there's 6, who stands head and shoulders above everyone else. He has struggled to find fault with how he was characterized. His backstory was simple but plausible, and I found it more affecting than I thought I would. His relationship with the Fitzroy's niece, Claire, was also pleasant, if not underwritten, and it didn't hurt that Gosling brought his innate screen presence to the party. Other than him, I've only seen a handful of actors who can add more charisma and integrity to a film by simply being in it. Another thing I noticed, as the agreement continued, is that its action is mind-numbing. I know, as an action buff, I shouldn't complain when a movie is too action-packed, but I kind of have to here. Early on, there's a set piece on a plane that's quite difficult to follow, featuring some of the worst CGI/FX that I've ever seen in a film with a 9-figure budget asterisk. Later on, when 6 and Dani get to Europe, the movie devolves into shootout after car chase after shootout. Don't get me wrong, some of these scenes are really good. The massive set piece in the second act got my blood pumping with belt-fed machine guns and RPGs tearing Prague apart. Still, one of these sequences should have been cut in favor of character building and or story development. I mean, when 2 different characters blow themselves up in almost the exact same way, you're clearly running out of ideas. Trim it down. At this point, I only have a few more critiques. First, the agreement tries too hard to be funny when it shouldn't, which is surprising given the Russo brothers' history doing Marvel movies. It irritated me that some characters equipped when something dead serious just happened. Second, Dhanush deserved better. His lone wolf character is awesome and his fight scenes are decent, but the last scene he's in is perplexing. Third, what's with all the drone shots? I get it, they're cool, but not so much if it becomes distracting. Lastly, the ending is incredibly bland. I understand that the filmmakers have sequels to set up, but come on, a better conclusion has to exist. Okay. I feel I should clarify. I don't hate the agreement. Sure, I have numerous criticisms about its writing, special effects, and overall composition. I mean, I've seen movies made for a load less that look a lot better and seem a lot more thoughtful, especially from an action standpoint. So, no, it's not a great action movie. Hell, it's not necessarily a good one, but it is entertaining. And I did find myself rooting for 6 and Dani. Gosling and Armas are top-notch as usual, and there's definitely a future for their characters. That said, I wouldn't expect them to ever surpass or even come close to Bond or Bourne. And to the Russos, if you're reading this, rein in the VFX and keep it in camera. Even if that means more drone shots. To make that exchange gladly. Ryan Gosling may not have played a superhero yet, but he gets closer than ever before in the mega-budget Netflix production. The agreement, the streaming service's summer blockbuster from the directors of Avengers, Endgame, Anthony and Joe Russo. It's understandable why Gosling would sign up and Netflix would open no to just their wallet but an entire bank vault for the Russos to adapt the book by Mark Greaney with an eye to starting a new mega franchise of their own. However, it's becoming clearer and clearer that Netflix has too little creative oversight over projects like these, just letting creators run off with their money and not really caring about what they deliver. After all, it fits the algorithm, right? People will watch the Greyman by the millions. Thea just won't be able to name a memorably thing about it a few days later. If These is the start of a franchise, and it almost certainly is, let's hope the agreement finds a little more definition in future installments. The star of La La Land and Drive plays a spy named Sierra 6007 was taken. Woe was recruited out of prison by a handler named Donald Fitzroy, Billy Bob Thornton. After that very brief setup, the grey man hits the ground running with a mission gone very awry when Six is tasked by a new boss named Denya Carmichael Regé-Jean Page with taking out a target that turns out to be a fellow secret agent. The dying man tells Six that Denya is a bad guy before handing him the intel to prove it. Immediately, our stoic hero is on the run before has really had any time to develop a personality as a movie character. That a kind of blank protagonist is fine for a taut, precise action films like Thusia and the John Wick franchise, but these isn't nearly the tight of a production. This movie needed an Ethan Hunt, somebody defined by more than just the cliché that he won't shoot a kid and he has a dark past. Seriously, it would be tough to name 5 characteristics of a hero that we're supposed to follow for 2 hours. Never a good sign. As Six goes on the run, Carmichael calls in Lloyd Hansen, Chris Evans, a former CIA Black Ops mercenary who now works in the private sector, where there are even a fewer rules about things like torture and dumb mustaches. Hansen will do whatever it takes to get Six, including kidnapping Fitzroy's daughter, Claire, Julia Butters, to get his attention. Of course, Six has a connection with Claire, having watched over her a few years ago. He's a spy who wants kids to live, which separates him from a sociopath like Hansen. Meanwhile, another spy named Danya Miranda, Anna Armas, joins Six on his quest for freedom, and she is given even a less character definition than her male counterparts, believe it or not. And that's really it for 2 hours. Good guy, a bad guy, woman in the middle, kid in a jeopardy. Things go boom. Some of the action sequences, especially an insania one in a town square, can be pretty effective, but most of the film is showed at such a bizarrely low light that it dulls even the incredible screen presence of the undeniably charismatic Gosling, Evans, and Armas. Seriously, whoever thought the right lighting for most of a globe-trotting action flick was the low-light palette of Ozark, it deserves a cinematic jail sentence. The agreement should be joyously over the top if it wants to be a new Fast and Furious airborne franchise, but with the exception of a wisecracking Evans, everything here feels so programmatically dull. It's a silly piece of popcorn entertainment that too often forgets that this kind of venture needs to be fun. Part of the problem is that Evans is never set up as an interesting threat. In fact, he seems a kind of horrible at his job. A colleague says that an asset removal gone horribly, a headline making wrong will be taught in schools as to what not to do. This isn't a battle of wills so much as a good spy versus the crazy spy. There's something underdeveloped in the idea that Gosling is the old-fashioned spy and Evans is the brute force modern maniac whose strategy seems to just be to blow up as much as possible. But the script by Joe Russo, Christopher Marcus, and Stephen Sully keeps trying to sell you on Hansen being a terrifying genius, and there's really no evidence of the latter part. Like so much original entertainment in the streaming world, the Grayman seems scared to take an actual risk. There have been many pieces written about the algorithms and the templates that feel like they're driving the creative decisions more than actual human beings. When will a company like Netflix throw $200 million at a movie and emerge with a John Wick, Mission Impossible, Mad Max, Fury Road, or even a Fast 5? It might take an actual superhero for something like that to happen. I always find it fascinating that Netflix will put down $200 million for a movie, then basically keep it only for Netflix subscribers. I guess they have money to burn as I don't think anyone is specifically subscribing to see just one film, and if they did they would probably take advantage of a free trial period. Anyway, The Grayman is the newest addition to the Netflix lineup and stars Ryan Gosling as Sierra 6, a CIA Black Ops assassin who is forced to go on the run after uncovering incriminating secrets about the agency, and Chris Evans as Lloyd Hansen, a psychopathic former CIA agent who is contracted by CIA bosses to capture six. The film starts in 2003 with senior CIA official Donald Fitzroy, played by Billy Bob Thornton, visiting a convicted murderer in prison. The murderer killed his abusive father in 1995 to protect his brother. Fitzroy offers the murderer freedom, but there's a catch. He will have to work as an assassin for the Che Sierra program. These assassins work off of the books and take out enemies of the estate with no questions asked. The murderer, Ryan Gosling, agrees and takes the code name Sierra 6, basically known now as 6 throughout the film. Fast forward to 2021 and 6 finds himself on a mission in Bangkok. He is told he has to assassinate someone who has been selling national security secrets to enemies of the country. 6 is working alongside Danny Miranda, and Armas. As he is about to assassinate the target, a child walks into view, so he holds back despite his bosses ordering him to take out the target and that the child is acceptable collateral damage. He fakes a gun jam and moves in to take out the suspect in close quarters instead. After pulling a fiery alarm, he takes down the suspect, but before he dies, he reveals he worked for the same people who hired 6 and that he was known as Sierra 4. He then hands him an encrypted USB drive hidden in a necklace and tells him it has details of the corruption of CIA official Daniel Carmichael. Regé-Jean Page. Carmichael is also the lead agent on this mission and 6 boss. When Carmichael is elusive about why this man was to be assassinated, 6 refuses evacuation and escapes. The CIA realize that 6 is a problem and now need to take him out. Carmichael hires mercenary Lloyd Hansen, a former CIA agent who also kicked out of the agency for his psychopathic tendencies. It is up to him to track down 6 and retrieve the USB drive. What follows is a non-stop 2-hour action film that really does have everything: double crosses, hand-to-hand fights, car chases, shootouts, young kid being kidnapped. You think of the action film cliché scene, and this film has it. Ryan Gosling is strong in the lead and pulls off the calm sort of good guy killer role very well. Chris Evans is excellent as psychotic Lloyd Hansen. You know he is psychotic because he wears a mustache, and the rest of the cast is just full of big-name stars. Wednesday night was the premiere of The Gray Man, the Russo brothers' ambitious action thriller that with a budget of $200 million is the most expensive movie Netflix has ever made. On Thursday, the review embargo for the film lifted, bringing with it a generally underwhelmed response from critics. The film stars Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans as court Gentry and Lloyd Hansen. Gentry is on the run from Hansen after coming into possession of top-secret information, and Hansen is unforgiving in his efforts to chase Gentry down. And Armas also stars as Daniel Miranda alongside Regé-Jean Page, Jessica Hennick, Julia Butters, Dhanush, Alfred Woodard, and Billy Bob Thornton. Overall, most critics agree that The Gray Man is an over-the-top attempt by Netflix to capture the magic of blockbuster thrillers like the 007 movies. Gosling, Evans, Armas, and their co-stars show their talents, but the majority of reviews criticized the cliché copyrighted script and breakneck pacing. Despite some issues, a few critics conceded that even with its flaws, the film is still a fun watch, and the strong ensemble makes it worth a viewer's time to see what this big-budget blockbuster is really about. There's nothing terribly original about the storytelling. Take a little of Shooter, a lot of John Wick, add a dash of Jason Bourne, shaken but not stirred into the License to Kill formula, and you've got the basic idea. What makes The Gray Man exciting? And let's not beat around the bush. This is the most exciting original action property Netflix has delivered since The Brighter the Shades. The ensemble bring it to their characters and the little ways in which the Russos come through, where those other films fell short. So begins a blockbuster so big that you can actually feel the price of your Netflix subscription going up with each new scene. This listless symbol of a summer action movie bouncing from one lavish Asian or European location to the next as it searches in vain for the streamer's first bona fide popcorn franchise. The algorithmic results don't reflect well on the Russo brothers' directing chops. Their monumental spandex operas seldom required and never displayed the kind of muscular imagination needed to stage a Michael Bay-like fight sequences. But The Greyman is even more damning for Netflix itself, particularly so far as it epitomizes the streamer's penchant for producing mega-budget movies that feel like glorified deepfakes of classic multiplex fare. For the most part, Netflix's The Greyman is a damn delight. It's a throwback to the days when studios could safely rely on throwing a couple of A-listers at an action script and some big explosions, give it a competent director, and have a hit on their hands. Frequently more funa and escapist than some of the recent James Bond films, it's also based on a book character, though not highly advertised as such. Ryan Gosling plays a Mark Greeny's freelance assassin and a former CIA operative court gentry, a name the movie largely eschews in favor of his code designation Sierra 6, or Gosling fans whose favorite movie was Drive. This feels like a slightly pumped-up dumbed-down version of that character with significantly more to say about how he doesn't actually have more to say. But heavens, smirking like a catbird, is the movie's main antagonist, and his pairing with Gosling is the pretty Monogodzilla vs. Kong most viewers came to sigh, though he's played Captain America for Anthony and Joe Russo many times over. Most recently in Avengers Endgame, the actor seems positively giddy every time he gets to flip to the role of, as some have fondly come to call him, America's a-hole. Here, everything about Lloyd, from his fascist little mustache to his schoolyard tons, delights him against seeks a Rachel Gary move. He's the leering frat boy jester, pretty much begging to be punched in that perfectly symmetrical face. The majority of the cast is similarly shackled by the edit's need to zip from scene to scene without a lasting human moment. Armas isn't so much doyed as she is a deer in the headlights. She's a more than capable actress, but she struggles here to so much as spin a questioning glance from the story's abyss. Even poor Jessica Hennick, who plays Carmichael's second-in-command, is saddled only with occasional objections and observations about Hansen's destructive methods. In order to give the film the appearance of a conscience or dilemma, the CIA needs to assassinate people the right way, quietly and legally. How brave until The Greyman recalls that Hank may be useful in some potential sequel, granting her a last-second usefulness that only serves to rob tension from existing scenes. Gosling says and does little for entertainment value, which is more about the screenplay that positions him as a generic action figure. Ditto Ana de Armas as Gosling's reluctant tag-along gal. Evans chews up the scenery, which most of his one-liners and zingers come off as preordained memes and gif moments that exist in a vacuum. All three of them do little more than remind us of better movies where they played similar characters. Billy Bob Thornton and Alfred Woodard, playing two elder agents trying to survive with dignity as the world passes them by, do their best to elevate their material. Rising star Julia Butters holds her own, even though she is quickly made a full-time hostage damsel, perhaps by default. The attempt by the film to recapture the glory days of the Hollywood action movie can't help but revert to past their time tropes and cliches. In their post-Marvel work, the Russos have notably given their superhero stars room to stretch. Last year's ambitious cherry allowed Tom Holland to flex some dramatic muscles beyond getting in a Spider-Man suit, and The Greyman lets Evans deliciously explore his wicked side. Yes, he is the best of the Chris's. And him doing a complete 180 from virtuous Captain America proves that once again Lloyd yells at underlings, goes punch for punch and snark for snark with Gosling, and absolutely owns a plethora of clever zingers like if you want to make an omelette, you got to kill some people. If you're craving an overblown action movie, The Greyman is probably worth a stream for him alone, a devilish villain playing an otherwise forgettable spy game. Among the biggest and most expensive Netflix movies of 2022 is The Greyman. The big-budgeted star-studded action whopper from the Russo brothers sports a hefty $200 million budget with Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, and Ana de Armas highlighting its star power. The Greyman is a major investment for the streaming platform which has suffered its share of losses recently. Netflix needs this blockbuster to work, and for what it's going for, it actually does. Anthony and Joe Russo became a pretty high-profile filmmakers thanks to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. To their credit, they were behind 4 of the MCU's very best films. Each were massive box office successes. Since moving away from superheroes, the brothers have taken aim at making films for streaming platforms. It's an interesting choice that they've been quick to defend. Joe's recent bizarre slamming of those who hold the theater experience in high regard. The Russo's first post-co venture was the not-so-great Tom Holland film Cherry. Now they give it another whirl with The Greyman, a movie co-written by their frequent MCU collaborators Christopher Marcus and Stephen Sully. The film is based on author Mark Green's 2009 debut novel about a former CIA operative who suddenly finds himself targeted by his own government. The movie opens in 2003 at a Florida state prison where inmate court Gentry Gosling is visited by a federal agent Donald Fitzroy, Billy Bob Thornton. After a few pleasantries, Fitzroy tells court that he's there on behalf of the government to commute his sentence. Of course, there is one pretty significant condition. Court must join the covered CIA Sierra program where he'll be trained to kill bad guys, and since you've already killed one, it shouldn't be too difficult. Fitzroy reasons. As you can probably guess, court agrees. Jump ahead 18 years. Court aka Sierra 6 is a seasoned Sierra operative and working a mission in Bangkok with field agent Danny Miranda Armas. Things take a turn after he discovers their target is a fellow government assassin designated Sierra for Kalen Mulvey. In his dying words forewarned 6 that the shifty CIA Fideni Carmichael Regé-Jean Page is crooked and intent on erasing anyone who can prove it. He gives 6 a memory drive with incriminating evidence against Carmichael and a number of other high-ranking feds. Realizing he's probably next on his government's kill list, 6 skips his extraction and goes off the grid. He contacts his old handler, Fitzroy, who was pushed into early retirement by Carmichael. Fitzroy reaches out to some old friends to help 6 escape. In the meantime, Carmichael grows more nervous and impatient. He calls on Lloyd Hansen, Evans, dressed as if he's been plucked out of a 1960s sitcom, a sociopathic contract killer known for his brutal and unhinged methods. As you can imagine, the injection of Lloyd into the equation leads to violence and chaos. He immediately goes after Fitzroy for leverage, even kidnapping his niece, Claire, Julia Butters, the chatty scene stealer from Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to help lure 6 out. Lloyd then puts out a huge bounty on 6's head and sends it out to hit teams in safe houses around the globe. Sounds like a foolproof approach, but 6 proves to be a lot harder to kill than the egotistical Lloyd expected. Despite Joe Russo's strange attempt at devaluing the theater experience, there's no denying that The Greyman would have popped on the big screen. The globe trotting to locations like Vienna, London, Hong Kong, Berlin, and Croatia, among others, is fun, and the energetic camera of DP Stephen F. Winden gives USA plenty of cool shots to enjoy. But the action scenes are the film's bread and butter, and the Russo's Winden, the visuals effects team, and the sound designers give us some real bangers that scream for the largest screen possible. The best is an over-the-top yet insanely fun action sequence through the streets of Prague. It's a blast. Another plus is how The Greyman handles its villains. Carmichael isn't another narcissist obsessed with world domination or a lunatic set on global destruction. Instead, he represents something more chilling. the secret lengths our own government protectors might go to hide the abuse of the public's trust, murdering police officers, gunning down innocent civilians, dispatching a government-sanctioned psychopath, all acceptable in their efforts to cover their dirty tracks. Granted, the movie isn't out to make a particularly profound point about it, but it's a welcome change from the normal antagonists who populate these kinds of films. Performance-wise, the movie features some pretty good ones. Gosling ratchets down on the emotionless poker-faced persona he has developed over a handful of other grittier action movies, but lets a little humor slip through now and then, and he certainly has the physical chops. Armas is given a lot more to do here than in a recent James Bond adventure, and she makes the most of it. She slips into the background a little too much. But whenever she re-emerges, it's usually with a bang, and I enjoyed seeing Thornton back on screen. He's a great presence, as is Alfred Woodard, also terrific in the few moments she's given. On the villain's side, Page is just the kind of detestable babe the film needs. He's never over the top, and he has a kind of self-serving callousness that makes you hate his guts. Chris Evans gets the film's showiest role. Outside of Captain America, there's not a lot in Evans to get excited about. That said, there's one character type he has always excelled at, the brash, smart-mouthed wisecracker. It was his signature in films like The Fantastic Four, The Losers, and even Knives Out. Here, Evans hams it up in a variation of that role, but there's a key reason the performance works so well. Rather than let Lloyd turn into a clown, the Russos know when to dial back the silliness and to let Evans take the character down some more sinister path. Without that restraint, Lloyd could have become an annoyance. Instead, he's a formidably antagonist. The biggest knock on the film is that the story's entire framework is undeniably simple and familiar. Even with a slightly different flavor of villains, the Greyman is too by the books. Rather than take some narrative big swings, the story is content with keeping it conventional. But for those hungry for fast-paced grand-scaled action, the Russos have you covered. The energy is high and the set pieces are massive. Add to it a charismatic cast and you have a popcorn movie that may not reinvent the wheel story-wise, but that delivers just the kind of fun adrenaline jolt action lovers crave. The Greyman premieres tomorrow, July 22nd, on Netflix. There's a scene about midway through Joe and Anthony Russo's The Gray Man in which a Chris Evans psychopathic intelligence operator Lloyd Hansen tortures Billy Bob Thornton's retired handler Fitzroy by peeling his fingernails off with a plier. The moment recalls similar torture scenes in past films such as Sirena, but the key difference here is we only see the before and after. The pliers applied to the fingernail and the detached bloody fingernail on a nearby table. It seems that the Russos, who have a taste for violent intense action films, still cannot escape the four-quadrant approach of their Avengers films, and so will not show Evansers while Captain America ripping fingernails off in agonizing detail. Thus, The Greyman, which is their attempt at a down and dirty action film, ultimately pulls the punches. To be gracious, I see the appeal in the film's overall approach. It's a globe-spanning action film with the scenes in Bangkok, Prague, Vienna, and Croatia among other exotic locations, which is especially appealing coming after 2 years of limited travel during the pandemic. It's obviously big budget, reportedly $200 million, which shows up not only in the variety of locations, but also in the big-name cast, which includes Chris Evans, Billy Bob Thornton, Ana de Armas, Jessica Henwick, Wagner Moura, Alfred Woodard, and the leading man, Ryan Gosling. In particular, it's a pleasure to see a Gosling on the big screen again, or should I say small screen, this being a Netflix film. The enigmatic leading man had taken a hiatus since starring in Damien Chazelle's excellent Neil Armstrong biopic, First Man, in 2018. The Greyman is his first film in 40 years, and it's fun to watch Galena Sierra 6, his code name. We never learn his real name. Weasel his way around beautiful foreign cities, dispatch check contractors, and flirt with Ana de Armas, a CIA agent. Danny Miranda, in the midst of gun battles. A line that is particularly amusing when delivered by Gosling: "No one throws a loaded gun?" Also his code name suggests, Gosling's character is the titular Grey Man, an off-the-book CIA asset who will kill whoever he's told to and never leave a paper trail. We learn a tidbit about his backstory and why he ended up in prison as a 15-year-old, but we don't get much more than Gosling being Gosling. Casting him as an emotional enigma counts as typecasting at this point, but I'm no complaining. The man wears mysterious charisma well. However, the film does struggle to impress when it's noted following Gosling engaged in close quarters combat. The Russos are action junkies and aspiring action movie art. They are capable of crafting entertaining action scenes, albeit not overly impressive ones. They brought us some action panache to television episodes of Community and injected some rough and tumble fisticuffs into them in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. They also produced 2020's Chris Hemsworth Netflix action film Extraction, which had some good action in the midst of its gritty theatrics. Side note, are the Russos adamant on making a Netflix action film starring each actor from the Avengers? So far that's 2 down. In spite of their modestly successful efforts in action filmmaking, they are no maestros of stunt choreography like John Wick's Chad Stahelski and David Leitch. Their action sequences have too much a haphazard shaky cam, and the choreography lacks the balletic grace of John Wick, nor do they have the blunt force impact of a Michael Bay or Paul Greengrass. They lack the mastery of montage and smash cuts of these directors, opting for more conventional action coverage. They are capable action directors, but not top level, and by no means a new action use, so the action scenes throughout the Grey Men are watchable, but nothing to write home about. The film is best when the characters are fighting one-on-one or when there's some color and impressive locations on the screen. For instance, the opening fight scene on New Year's Eve in Bangkok plays with the reds, yellows and oranges of fireworks in inventive ways. Their filmmaking is at its worst when it goes big and the CGI starts to buckle under the weight of the scale. A fight scene aboard a tram in Prague makes the goofy climactic chase of last year's F9, the Fast Saga seem rather credible in retrospect, and when there aren't guns blasting or characters beating down on each other, the film's not all that interesting. The Russos' version of a character flavor is banter and a cringeworthy bad guy lines such as, "If you want to make an omelette, you got to kill some people," which Chris Evans struggles with. In fact, Evans struggles throughout. He's a great Captain America, but whenever he plays a clever bastard, as he does here, he can seem more annoying than amusing. Add that to the film's paint-by-numbers depiction of psychopathy. Jessica Henn, calling Lloyd a sociopath, recalls some unfortunate linear readings from The Room, and you've got a truly weak bad guy, not just a forgettable one. The film's quiet character moments aren't much better. Also, the main emotional thrust of the film relies on Gosling bonding with Julia Butters Claire, Fitzroy's young niece. His protectiveness of her deals with some trauma from his upbringing, which plays into the familiar modern placet of male action heroes working out their drama through violence. It's rather dull, although you don't blame Gosling or Butters, who continues to impress after making such a mark as the young actress sharing a scene with Leonardo DiCaprio in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a simplified emotional layering to try to make us care about the cat and mouse between Gosling and Evans, and pretty standard in these types of movies nowadays. The Grey Man is surely better than many of the other $200 million would-be blockbusters that Netflix has produced. I watched it. While I wouldn't watch Red Notice even if I were paid to, it's nice to see Gosling again. It's appealing to watch globe-trotting action. But surely with this budget and this cast, we can expect a better script and some filmmaking with a bit more verve. Watching two guys throw each other around a French castle is fun. But there's a way to make such a thing art. With The Grey Man, It's just modestly a diverting content. Do you like empty posturing and stylistics, faux clever banter, saccharine emotional manipulation, dubious meaning and non-existent character motivation, a wannabe cool needle drops, and a series of exhausting set pieces? How about a muddy visuals, hollow action, and an over-reliance on camera tricks due to a lack of ability to shoot a fight scene? Just for kicks, why not throw in a stacked cast of actors you like but wish you were all in a better movie? And all for a bloated price tag of $200 million. If that sounds like fun, it's not. It all adds to Netflix's latest vapid action offering, The Greyman. From a Marvel alliance the Russo brothers, The Greyman wants to be many things. A James Bond movie, a Bourne movie, a Mission, a Impossible movie, and perhaps most of all, a Shane Black movie. Only it plays like a photocopy of all of those. On the surface, it looks like The Thing, but it misses what make those movies fun and good. Instead opting for tepid, a toothless PG-13 action that carries a precisely zero weight because there's no one particularly interesting or compelling to invest in. Stars Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans do their best in this tale of a shadowy government assassin. Gosling, betrayed by his handlers and hunted by a psychotic private contractor, Evans. But not even their considerable charm and enthusiasm can salvage this bloated, ugly movie that feels like the result of feeding superior films into a bot. Also, nothing actually resolves at the end. It's all set up for the next installment, hinting at things to come, laying the groundwork for more sequels. I know that's not how it works anymore, but once, just once, I'd like filmmakers to tell a good, complete, compelling story, then worry about establishing a franchise. I've watched a far worse, but damn, The Greyman is just the bland shell of an action movie. It's the best of these kind of usually forgettable movies. The dialogue is snappy and funny when it wants to be. The action set pieces are fun and for the most part have great blocking and clarity. The cast is its biggest strength, with most of the small side characters being genuinely interesting. Gosling is terrific. Is this his first all-out action movie? He's a great action leading man who's both extremely capable and totally fallible. And Armas turns in a good repeat performance of her character from No Time to Tea Again, even though she left a bigger impression in those couple of minutes of fast screen time. It pains me to say this. Chris Evans is noticeably miscast. I get it. If you have a personal connection to Evans, you cast Evans. He's having a great time and he deserves to get out from Captain America. But the whole time I was just so aware I was watching Evans play a bad guy and never just bought him as the bad guy. I spent not a small amount of the runtime wondering if maybe he and Gosling should have been swapped to fill that runtime. It's too long by almost a quarter and all of that to not even wrap up satisfactory. It's definitely gunning for a sequel and kind of suffers from it. There's a bit of rough CGI here which I don't necessarily hold against the movie itself so much as the industry's tendency to just storyboard cool stuff and be like, don't worry about how we'll do it. I've got a guy. The falling from an airplane scene is layered in so much digital lens dirt and flares that it might as well have switched to an audiobook for that sequence. There's a cool action bit where Six is fighting a guys while filling the room with the pink smoke from a flare. It's painfully obvious the smoke is CGI. But I mean, it's smoke. I get that you have to clear the room after every take, but it's smoke. Your movie will exist forever now and you couldn't schedule the extra day to allow for real smoke. Those are my only real gripes. That and please don't let FPV drone footage in movies become a thing. But otherwise, it's plenty of fun and I'd certainly recommend it to just about anyone if they've already got a night in planned. That's what the growth of stylish, hyper-violent, technically accomplished, skillfully produced, massively budgeted movies has done. It has cemented the primacy of an entire category of film that can do everything that could possibly be expected of it. Everything it means to do and can still feel made out of nothing. Cast with a talented capital M, S movie stars with the charisma to carry it. In this case, Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans. A movie like The Grey Man can have a load of pleasures. It can have cleverness, inventiveness, a wink to its embrace of extremely silly set pieces, but there's something that's just not there about it, an unnerving sense that if you unknown the whole thing layer after layer, you'll discover its rapid around only itself. The setup based on Mark Greene's 2009 novel is Thieves years ago to get out of a long prison sentence. The man we know as Six, Ryan Gosling, gave up his identity, name, history, family, connections, and became an assassin, an asset of the United States government in exchange for his freedom. He is part of one of those impossible Mission Force-style teams, the glamour of which is based on the idea that there are limitations on what the government does in the light of day, and that the bravest badasses are the ones who ignore those limitations. Six begins the story being sent to kill a guy he doesn't know anything about, but during the mission, things get complicated and he winds up on the run himself on the wrong side of his own secret, violent, lawless, unaccountably organization. Whoops. This basically happens to absolutely every participant in a force like this at some point. 6. Chili boss. Regé-Jean Page just as hot in a suit and glasses as he was on Brita Gurdon wants him tracked down by any means necessary and brings in a private contractor to do the job. That contractor's name is Lloyd Hansen and he is played by Chris Evans in an unflattering short haircut and a cheap sleazy little mustache. Lloyd may have imposing arms in both senses, and he might sometimes show the same flashes of wit that Evans brought to his role in Knives Out. But make no mistake, both these guys are long-time hired killers, but he is the bad guy. Six is meant to be the good guy, just trying to survive and save Fitzroy. Billy Bob Thornton, the retired mentor whose continuing safety is now being used as leverage against him. Hansen is into straight-up torturing people, which we get to have to watch and which is one of the many things about the film that raises the question, look around at the world. Do we have to do this right now? 3 are a lot of lively, nicely done bits in The Grey Man, smart uses of reflections, a preposterous but repulsive sequence involving handcuffs and a bench, a slider running gag about the people who keep having to help Six not die, and an underutilized but still effective Armas doing a lot of very cool fighting. Gosling's dry, exhausted muttering and Evans' cheesy, sleazy, high-energy declarations are an effective matched set. The action doesn't feel phoned in, it feels stylish and it's why as does the everything should look like a nightclub lighting of much of the movie, including the parts that do not take place in nightclubs. But The Grey Man feels hollow, and it's not because it needs to be a character-driven drama. It's enough for the stakes to be all about good guys and bad guys. It really is. But in this case, everybody in the story is a merciless killer who does what they're retold. We don't necessarily know what kinds of people Six has killed in our request and murders who they're told to murder pretty much, and picking through the details to differentiate who's good and whose bait feels beside the point. The dynamic between Six and Hansen. The inspiration would seem to be dry-hearted with Hansen as the highly competent body guy you almost root for, except that John Lan was also trying to save a building full of innocent people. Finding all of this unsatisfying is the kind of complaint that gets one tagged as a person who doesn't understand the mindless action movies. But lots of mindless action movies don't suffer from this ailment. They find a way to feel built around something solid, whether it's a team or a mission or a particular purpose. Consider, if you will, the fast. Consider as we must the furious. The Grey Man also can't quite work as a story of chaos among immoral chaos agents the way say a mafia story can because Six and Hansen don't have an existing relationship. In fact, most of these people don't have much in the way of relationships with each other than Six and his other mentor played by Alfred Woodard. The relationship between the two of them feels instantly genuine and compelling, by far the most believable in the movie. but the time we spend with it is comically brief. If everybody is going to be off the books, hierarchical or so differentiated only at the margins, the stakes have to come from the individuals. Let's have some betrayals, some old wounds, some old arguments, some long-growing resentments. We've got Ryan Gosling and we've got Chris Evans and we've got Armas. We could even have some sex. But there's something more interesting hovering around the edges of this project. As is often the case with creatively unsatisfying outings from talented people, The Greyman is both a celebration of a certain kind of intoxicating, overcranked masculinity and at times a mockery of it. Lloyd is terrifying and merciless, but he's also ridiculous, and the basic structure of the film is that Six finds himself in situation after situation in which it appears that he cannot possibly escape in the manner of James Bond, or if you will MacGyver, and it repeatedly takes other people, specifically women, to bail him out. There is a delicate balance in which Six is both a superhum who survives the obviously unsurvivable and a fallibly guy who keeps getting got. Gosling and Evans both seem to be playing to the potential to the preposterous manly a showdown that neither of them really has the juice to win. But while that idea dances around the margins, the film comes back over and over to a more conventional, more muscular, literally approach. What is missing here is a narrative engine. Call it John Wick's a puppy, the moment that provides even the thinnest thread of something else to care about besides killer versus killer. Of course, it's important to acknowledge that as in John Wick, many fictional women, mostly wives and girlfriends, who also the occasional daughter or a colleague, have given their lives on or off screen so that men with guns can seem more human, which is also not great. Here, along those lines, you eventually get a vulnerable young girl imperiled, but by the time that happens, it seems wildly cynical. The directors of The Greyman are Joe and Anthony Russo, whom you might know from making Marvel movies, Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Captain America, Civil War, Avengers, Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame that grossed something like $6 billion worldwide. What they have learned about how to stage a big action sequence with the benefit of a huge budget, reportedly $200 million, shows here. While this is far more bloody than an MCU outing, it's also solidly choreographed, if more than a little silly. It's the kind of movie where a fight takes place around the tubes that are firing off fireworks, a display just because. Sure, why not? Looks cool. It's the kind of movie where a guy in a fight starts throwing around red smoke bombs because, sure, looks cool. I should note I went to a theatrical screening, because this is a spectacle. It will be interesting to see how it holds up when seen mostly at home. Nothing here seems accidentally or poorly done. These are choices, with all of the effort that's gone into the action. The most conspicuous issues with the execution are actually in the dialogue. While there are some funny lines, particularly for the two leads, there are also places where a line that's clearly meant to pack a punch sounds like a first draft that needed a couple more passes. You can tell what the linea is supposed to do. You are cued by sound and pacing and pauses, but it doesn't quite do it. Wishing is not critique. It may not be in the strictest sense criticism. I simply wish everyone involved in a project like this had taken their considerable talent, skill, power, money, imagination, and so forth and done something else. The Greyman seems to be exactly what it means to be, and in the moment, it's often fun, there's something eerily vacant in its assembly. Maybe even trained movie assassins need something to believe in. Hello and welcome back. Today we are reviewing Netflix's big $200 million about Anthony and Joe Russo's The Greyman opinions. I think The Greyman is alright. That's probably not what Netflix wants me to say. They're not paying me, by the way, but I think it is a film that could grow into a good franchise because I think the things that work quite well in this film do work well, but for me there are some definite issues. I think one of the strongest things about this film is the cast. This is Ryan Gosling's first film in 4 years since First Man, and I must say this is a great way to return for him, obviously. He has been in action-adjacent films like Nicholas Winding Refen's Drive 2011, but he has never been in a classic-style action film like Die Hard or anything in the Mission Impossible franchise, and he is a very good action hero. 6 is his name in this film, and if this film becomes a successful franchise, I think he will become a good hero because he is quite likable. And not to spoil too much, but Gosling has a good emotional connection with Claire Fitzroy, played by Julia Butters, which, not to get too off a topic, but that is a super cool name. There were good scenes where they bonded together, especially the joke where Claria told him he wasn't allowed to chew gum in their house, and that line came back in the final scene, which was cool. Ana de Armas plays Danny Miranda, and I must say that I really like Ana de Armas. I think she is extremely talented, and I personally think she was Oscar-worthy in Knives Out, while in Knives Out a reunion, and I'm pretty sure Evans and Armas are making another film together. After looking it up, they're starring in a film called Ghosted, which will be released on Apple TV and finish the filming in May 2022, so will probably be released next year. She was so good in that, but I am disappointed she wasn't given too much to do in the film. She does well with what she has, but I think her character is so underwritten. There is just not much there, which is disappointing because from what she is given, she seems like she could become a really good action hero. I am going to save my boy Chris Evans for later because he deserves another section. The rest of the cast includes Billy Bob Thornton, Alfreda Woodward, whose screen time was far too short, Regé-Jean Page, for all you Brita Gurdon stands, and a new trend in action movies that has emerged in the last couple of years is the use of drones and drone shots, and while maybe a good way to establish a location and to get us involved in the world, I really do not think they work well in fight scenes. One of my issues is that I think that it makes the action sequences in these films feel really choppy, and the plane sequence in this film just felt like I was watching a Saw movie with all of the quick cuts and weird distorted editing. This drone technique was also used in Michael Bay's Ambulance 2022, and while I haven't seen that movie or any other Michael Bay movie for that matter, you can imagine that I am not exactly running home to watch his filmography. I am just not sure why it has become a thing because in my opinion, it kind of ruins potentially a very good action scenes. I think the drone shots were used on all of the action scenes, but to me at least Ida really stood out to me in that plane sequence. The rest of the action scenes were pretty fun, and at least I knew what was going on. So yeah, Chris Evans is the best thing in this movie. He plays the violent sociopath that is Lloyd Hansen, and you can tell that he is having an absolute blast in the role. I think that you could definitely say that the role is a little bit overly cartoonish and over the top, but I definitely have a little bit of a soft spot for villains who knowingly indulge in villainous tropes and having a laugh while they were doing it. I personally think that is why Maleficent is the most popular villain out of all the classic Disney villains. Let's say Pretty Mermaid and Ursula, because in Sleeping Beauty, she is having so much fun, casting the curse on baby Aurora. And to prove my point, I am pretty sure she even laughs when the kingdom guards and soldiers try to attack her. Anyway, to finish my long-winded point, I like and I think other people like Queen of villains are having loads of fun in films, and Lloyd Hansen is a very good example of this. Evans sports a square-style mustache. I don't really know the official name for the style. If you know, tell me in the comments. There you go. There is my shameless plug. Are you a pieced algorithm? And I think he looks really good in it. I have heard some people complaining that he didn't twirl it. But come on people, it wasn't that a style of mustache. Isn't Ryan Gosling's fight scene, especially on which was towards the end of the film, which was at a fountain in a maze. Only a question, whose house was that? They were just situated in that house. Okay, as I typed this, I realized that it was Fitzroy's house. Though I am just being silly, sorry. It was a really well shot, especially the use of foul lighting. Like I am pretty sure that it is late at night, but the use of the tuna was really cool. Another thing that was really good was the score by Henry Jackman. It really suited all of these sequences and suited the modern feel alike. It felt like the Greyman. You know what I mean? Henry Jackman is doing a lot of good work as of recently. I think another one of my issues is that Thesa doesn't really stand out in the pantheon of recent action movies. Like this could be another installment in the Bourne franchise, and I don't think anyone would really bat an eye, you know. Ryan Gosling would make a good rebooted Bourne alike instead of the random Jeremy Renner one that clearly no one liked because they only made one of them and then Thea went back to Matt Damon and people didn't really like that one either. So, it was kind of a lose-lose situation. Also, I said in the intro, Netflix has spent $200 million on this film, so you would think they definitely want this film to become a franchise, obviously. Netflix is kind of in a shaky place at this moment with them losing a fair amount of subscribers as of late, and I think just the public mood has kind of just gone a little bit south for Netflix, and I will be interested to see how it all pans out because audiences are clearly liking the film because it has 90% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. I haven't seen much of the Russo brothers' filmography, so I'll admit I'm not the best judge of their overall work. That said, I think their strengths shine brightest when they're working with a well-established world and clearly defined characters. Although The Gray Man is based on Mark Greene's 2009 novel, the film feels surprisingly unfocused, without the rich, interconnected universe that helped make the MCU so engaging. The story often comes across as messy and underdeveloped. After finishing the movie, I looked up its budget and was shocked to learn that Netflix reportedly spent around $200 million, making it the studio's most expensive production at the time. Honestly, I struggled to see where all that money ended up on screen, even with stars like Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans leading the cast. Much of the spectacle is buried beneath layers of CGI-driven action. Perhaps rising production costs played a role, but regardless, one of the year's biggest action films ends up feeling surprisingly empty and uninspired. Based on Mark Greene's best-selling novel, The Gray Man follows Sierra 6, played by Ryan Gosling, a convicted criminal who is offered a reduced prison sentence in exchange for becoming a CIA assassin. Under the guidance of veteran agent Donald Fitzroy, Billy Bob Thornton, Six spends years carrying out covert missions without asking questions. The story then jumps ahead 18 years, when Six finally begins to question whether the people he's being ordered to eliminate are truly the villains he's been led to believe. It's an interesting premise, although it feels a bit odd that it takes him nearly 2 decades to reach this point. Unfortunately, the film doesn't spend much time exploring this moral conflict. Naturally, the agency can allow someone like Six to become a liability. A massive manhunt is launched, with the arrogant and unpredictable Lloyd Hansen, Chris Evans, assigned to eliminate him. Meanwhile, CIA agent Donnie Miranda, Armas, refuses to follow orders and joins forces with Six, setting the stage for a globe-trotting chase. At 2 hours and 10 minutes, The Gray Man feels longer than it needs to be. Despite its impressive scale, it never develops much emotional weight or narrative depth. Shorter action films often succeed by staying focused and knowing exactly when to end. In fact, many Scott Adkins movies, made with a fraction of this budget and running around 85 minutes, deliver tighter storytelling and more satisfying action. Directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, best known for Avengers, Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, the film places far more emphasis on action than narrative. The story mainly serves as a bridge between one explosive set piece and the next, while Gosling and Evans trade sarcastic one-liners throughout. Because of that, the movie's success depends almost entirely on its action scenes. Some of them are genuinely exciting, with strong choreography, impressive visuals, and clear camera work. Thankfully, the Russo brothers avoid the excessive shaky cam and frantic editing that plague many modern action movies, making it easy to follow the fights. Still, The spectacle eventually becomes overwhelming. Several sequences drift into the kind of large-scale CGI chaos that feels more like a superhero blockbuster than a grounded spy thriller. Watching major stars perform against obvious green screen backdrops can make the action feel artificial, and after a while, it starts to lose its impact. The film isn't bad by any means, but the non-stop excess becomes exhausting. A shorter runtime and a little more restraint would have made the experience much stronger. The core story is also familiar. A skilled assassin begins questioning the morality of his missions, discovers he's become a target, and finds himself hunted by the very organization he once served. The Gray Man doesn't try to reinvent this formula. Instead, it aims to deliver a bigger, louder, and funnier action-adventure than most streaming originals. In that respect, the Russo brothers succeed to a degree. Ryan Gosling brings effortless charm and dry humor to Sierra 6, while Chris Evans clearly enjoys playing the over-the-top villain Lloyd Hansen. Bob Thornton adds a welcome sense of authority as Donald Fitzroy, the CIA handler who recruits Six with an irresistible offer: freedom in exchange for a lifetime of covert assassinations. The catch is simply you leave your old life behind forever, carry out every mission without question, and officially cease to exist. Unfortunately for the CIA, Six goes rogue after obtaining a hard drive filled with classified agency secrets that he was originally sent to recover. To stop him, the CIA hires the unpredictable freelance mercenary Lloyd Hansen, Chris Evans, who launches a worldwide manhunt by placing a massive bounty on Six and the stolen drive, drawing assassins from across the globe into the chase. The Gray Man delivers the kind of high-octane summer blockbuster audiences have been waiting for. If this adventure is any indication, it's easy to imagine the franchise continuing with future installments. Ryan Gosling is at the top of his game, portraying Sierra 6 as a fearless operative who lets his actions speak louder than his words. Despite being a trained assassin, Six is written with enough heart and humanity to make him easy to root for. Beneath his hardened exterior lies a man with a strong moral code who only entered the CIA's secret Sierra program as an alternative to spending his life behind bars. Six is exceptionally skilled at what he does, making him one of the agency's greatest assets and, once he goes rogue, one of its biggest threats. That's why CIA Director Denny Carmichael, Regé-Jean Page, and Lloyd Hansen are willing to risk everything to bring him down. Chris Evans is a revelation in a role that couldn't be more different from Captain America. As Lloyd Hansen, he fully embraces a charismatic, egotistical, and wildly unhinged villain who dominates every scene he appears in. His chemistry with Gosling is one of the film's biggest strengths, with their constant verbal sparring and physical confrontations easily stealing the spotlight. And Armas is equally impressive as CIA agent Donnie Miranda, bringing both charm and intensity to the action. The film's action sequences are among its strongest elements. Every fight, whether featuring Gosling, Evans, or Armas, is choreographed with remarkable precision, almost resembling an expertly performed dance. Each movement feels deliberate, fluid, and believable. For a Netflix production, the level of stunt work and choreography is surprisingly ambitious and cinematic. Visually, The Gray Man embraces a sleek, vibrant style filled with sharp imagery and neon-inspired colors. While this look has become increasingly common in modern action films, the movie uses it effectively, paying homage to stylish franchises like John Wick. The biggest difference between the two ultimately comes down to the story. While John Wick offers a stronger narrative, The Gray Man matches it in terms of exciting action, entertaining performances, humor, and overall entertainment value. The Russo brothers continue their impressive run of delivering polished, crowd-pleasing blockbusters. Based on Mark Greene's 2009 spy thriller novel, The Gray Man reunites directors Anthony and Joe Russo with several of their Marvel Cinematic Universe collaborators, including screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, as well as Chris Evans. It also features an impressive cast that includes Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, and Armas, Regé-Jean Page, Billy Bob Thornton, Alfred Woodard, Julia Butters, and Dhanush. The film serves as a modern tribute to the action movies of the 1980s and 1990s, blending explosive set pieces, witty one-liners, and an unforgettable villain. Gosling stars as Sierra 6, a member of the CIA's covert Sierra program, a team of former criminals recruited by Donald Fitzroy, Billy Bob Thornton, to carry out off-the-books assassination missions. Everything changes when 6 is assigned by Denny Carmichael to eliminate a target who turns out to possess information capable of exposing corruption within the CIA. Refusing to ignore the truth, 6 becomes a fugitive. Carmichael responds by hiring the ruthless Lloyd Hansen, who assembles an army of mercenaries to hunt him down. Along the way, 6 receives help from trusted allies, including former CIA official Margaret Cahill, Alfred Woodard, and Agent Donnie Miranda, Ana de Armas. Together, they battle relentless assassins, including the formidable Vixen, Dhanush, while 6 also fights to rescue Fitzroy's kidnapped niece, Claire, Julia Butters. The screenplay occasionally becomes overly complicated, especially when dealing with the CIA's internal politics and the Sierra program. Rather than exploring those ideas in depth, the film keeps its focus firmly on spectacular action sequences and the personalities of its lead characters. The dialogue is packed with cheesy one-liners, ranging from jokes comparing 6 to a Ken doll to blunt orders to make him dead. Fortunately, Chris Evans delivers these lines with infectious enthusiasm, making Lloyd both hilarious and dangerously unpredictable. Gosling provides the perfect contrast with his calm, understated performance, creating an entertaining balance between the two leads. Whenever Gosling and Evans share the screen, whether exchanging sarcastic insults or throwing punches, the movie reaches its peak. Their performances are knowingly playful, embracing the over-the-top spirit of classic action films instead of taking themselves too seriously. The supporting cast also contributes plenty of energy. Ana de Armas proves once again that she's an outstanding action star, bringing emotional depth and physical intensity to Donnie Miranda. Billy Bob Thornton, Alfred Woodard, and Julia Butters all perform their supporting roles well, even if they don't receive as much screen time. Dhanush, however, stands out despite his limited role. His intimidating screen presence and brutally effective combat skills make him one of 6's most memorable opponents, and his action scenes rank among the film's highlights. Not every character fares as well. Regé-Jean Page's Denny Carmichael and Jessica Hennick's Suzanne Brewer are given dialogue that often feels exaggerated and underwritten, making it difficult for either actor to fully shine. Overall, The Gray Man succeeds as an entertaining summer action spectacle elevated by the charisma of Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans. Among Netflix's major action releases, it sits alongside films like 6 Underground and Red Notice, but distinguishes itself with stronger fight choreography, more engaging performances, and a greater emphasis on espionage than broad comedy. Unlike many Netflix action films, it doesn't depend on Ryan Reynolds-style humor. Instead, it allows Gosling's understated wit and Evans' outrageous villainy to create a unique comedic dynamic. The result is a more exciting, fun, and consistently entertaining experience. Whether you're interested because of the cast, the filmmakers, or simply the promise of non-stop action, The Gray Man is well worth watching. Its expertly crafted action scenes deserve the biggest screen possible, making a theatrical viewing ideal. Even on Netflix, however, it's a film best experienced on the largest screen available. With the Russo brothers behind the camera and an outstanding ensemble in front of it, The Gray Man delivers a fun, stylish, and energetic action thriller. Its embrace of classic 1980s and 1990s action movie sensibilities makes it an enjoyable and highly rewatchable blockbuster. That said, one of Hollywood's recurring realities is that even the biggest stars sometimes find themselves in projects that don't fully match their talents. Some critics argue that The Gray Man is a visually impressive but emotionally hollow action film that aims to capture the spirit of Mission Impossible without reaching the same level of storytelling. From that perspective, the movie offers entertainment mainly through its non-stop action rather than its narrative depth. The exchanges between Gosling's reluctant hero and Evans' flamboyant villain are intentionally simple, occasionally relying on familiar action movie dialogue instead of memorable writing. Gosling plays Six, the last surviving member of the Sierra Black Ops program created by veteran CIA operative Donald Fitzroy. The film opens with Six infiltrating a lavish party in Bangkok, dressed in a striking red suit as he prepares for another dangerous mission, setting the stage for the globe-spanning adventure that follows. In The Gray Man, CIA operative Sierra 6 is sent to eliminate a target who turns out to be far more than just another enemy. After uncovering a hard drive containing evidence of corruption within the agency, 6 finds himself caught in a dangerous conspiracy involving senior CIA official Denny Carmichael, played by Regé-Jean Page. Determined to protect his secrets at any cost, Carmichael hires the ruthless freelance assassin Lloyd Hansen, played by Chris Evans, to hunt Six down. Lloyd is as unpredictable as he is sadistic. Even the CIA considered him too dangerous to keep around. Dressed in tight white pants, sockless suede loafers, and sporting a ridiculous mustache, he brings a bizarre sense of style to an otherwise brutal character. Six repeatedly mocks his appearance, delivering sarcastic one-liners that become a recurring source of humor throughout the film. To force Six into the open, Lloyd kidnaps Claire, the beloved niece of Six's mentor Donald Fitzroy, portrayed by Bob Thornton. Claire, played by Julia Butters, also suffers from a heart condition and relies on a pacemaker, a detail that becomes an important plot device later in the story. Meanwhile, Armas appears as CIA agent Donnie Miranda, who periodically joins the action to rescue Six and help him stay one step ahead of his relentless pursuers. The story races across several international locations, including Bangkok, Langley, Vienna, and Prague. Despite the globe-trotting adventure, these settings rarely feel distinctive, serving mostly as backdrops for endless gunfights, explosive action sequences, and violent confrontations. One particularly disturbing torture scene even implies a character's fingernails being pulled out with pliers, emphasizing the film's brutal tone. Directors Anthony and Joe Russo previously delivered massive box office successes, including Avengers: Endgame. However, commercial success doesn't always translate into compelling filmmaking. Their earlier Marvel entries, Captain America, The Winter Soldier and Captain America: Civil War, balance action with stronger storytelling and more engaging characters. By comparison, The Gray Man offers an expensive, polished production but struggles to leave a lasting emotional impact. Despite its enormous budget, the film often feels more exhausting than exciting. A climactic hand-to-hand battle between Six and Lloyd is a perfect example. Although both Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans are physically convincing in their roles, the fight becomes an endless exchange of punches, grunts, and slow-motion impacts. Rather than highlighting the personalities of the two rivals, the sequence reduces them to oversized action figures. The film ultimately fails to make either character especially memorable, despite the charisma of its stars. If The Gray Man were your only introduction to the CIA, you might assume the agency exists solely to recruit assassins and eliminate anyone who becomes inconvenient. The story revolves around Lloyd Hansen's relentless pursuit of court gentry, also known as Sierra 6, after court discovers evidence exposing the CIA's unethical Sierra program, which transforms convicted killers into government-sanctioned operatives. The similarities to the Jason Bourne franchise are difficult to ignore. Like those films, The Gray Man jumps from city to city, stages elaborate close-quarters combat sequences, and gives its emotionally distant hero a troubled past. Unlike Bourne, however, Six isn't searching for the truth as much as he's simply trying to survive while protecting Claire from Lloyd's increasingly violent attacks. The film's opening mission in a Bangkok nightclub showcases both its strengths and weaknesses. Ordered to eliminate a target with a sniper rifle through multiple glass floors, Cord refuses after spotting a child in the line of fire. Instead, he silently infiltrates the nightclub, eliminating guards with knives stolen from dining tables. The concept is entertaining, but the action choreography often lacks clarity, making it difficult to fully appreciate the sequence despite its impressive scale. After obtaining the incriminating data drive that exposes Carmichael's corruption, Cord becomes the target of an international manhunt. Lloyd assembles a deadly team of mercenaries while Donnie Miranda reluctantly joins Cord's side. One of the film's biggest action sequences unfolds in Vienna, where a massive firefight involving police, mercenaries, and civilians creates spectacular destruction. While visually impressive, the excessive scale often borders on the parody. Where the film truly comes alive is during the verbal exchanges between Cord and Lloyd. Chris Evans clearly enjoys playing against type, transforming into an arrogant, cheerful psychopath with impeccable comic timing. Ryan Gosling, meanwhile, delivers understated humor through his calm, dry responses. After identifying Lloyd solely from a phone conversation, Cord jokes that the white pants and that mustache just scream Lloyd, perfectly capturing the playful rivalry between the two. Unfortunately, that chemistry rarely extends to the supporting cast. Alfre Woodard makes the most of her brief appearance as a retired intelligence chief, adding gravitas to every scene she's in. Indian star Dhanush appears in a memorable cameo that feels designed to introduce a future spin-off or sequel. However, most other supporting characters receive little development and are quickly overshadowed by the non-stop action. Adapted from Mark Greene's best-selling novel series by Joe Russo, Christopher Marcus, and Stephen McFeely, The Gray Man is a loud, stylish action spectacle filled with familiar spy movie cliché copyright s, oversized set pieces, and a steady stream of sarcastic dialogue. While the film occasionally delivers entertaining moments such as Donnie eliminating an army of enemies inside a Croatian fortress with a grenade launcher, it repeatedly chooses spectacle over meaningful storytelling. Ultimately, The Gray Man demonstrates that massive explosions, globe-spanning action, and a $200 million budget cannot replace memorable characters and a compelling narrative. It's an entertaining blockbuster with impressive visuals and charismatic performances from Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans, but beneath its polished surface lies a familiar story that rarely rises above the conventions of the modern action genre. Film details: A Sense director, Anthony Russo; A Sense screenplay, Joe Russo, Christopher Marcus, and Stephen McFeely, based on the Gray Man novels by Mark Greene. A Sense starring Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, Armas, Regé-Jean Page, Billy Bob Thornton, Julia Butters, Alfre Woodard, and Dhanush. A Sense cinematography, Stephen F. Winden. A Sense editor, Jeffrey Ford. A Sense music, Henry Jackman. A Sense distributor, Netflix. A Sense release date, July 15, 2022. A Sense running time, 129 minutes. A Sense country, United States. A Sense language, English. A Sense budget, $200 million. A Sense reported box office, $454,023.